Hey folks, in this episode I'll show you how to make these two aquatic plants, Didiplis Diandra and Crinum Thaianum. I will also show you how to make these generative rock assets, which we'll then use in the final episode to create procedural generative tropical aquariums. So without further ado, let's get to it. I'm going to start from where we left off in episode 1 because I want all my assets in one blend file. I've made a couple of changes to this file since last time. This was named as plant, and I've actually given it its proper name, Echinodorus amazonicus, and this collection here was previously named as grass, and I've given it its correct name, which is Echinodorus tenalis, and I've also renamed the materials as well, respectively. So let's get to it. So I'm going to select my ground plane. I'm just going to mute the scatter distribution, we don't need to see that, and I'm going to mute the Echinodorus amazonicus. I might hide this scatter plane as well, and I'll go into viewport. Let's just hide that as well from viewport. So the first plant we're going to make using geometry nodes. So I'm going to skip over to geometry nodes here. We're going to model the leaf, and then we're going to use geometry nodes to make the actual plant. I'm going to hit Shift A, add, we'll go for mesh plane. I'm then going to tab into edit mode. I'm going to hit RX90, hit enter, GZ. I'm going to snap this to the grid with my snapping turned on, so the base of the object is at the origin. I'm then going to hit RX, I'm going to bring this in to maybe round about there. Shift R, I'm going to add a loop cut, and I'm going to scroll my mouse wheel till I've got, let's say, 5 cuts. That should do it. I then need to shape the leaf. O to turn on proportional editing up here. I'm going to make sure smooth is set. I'll box select these vertices here. I'm going to hit SX, I'm going to scale this in to around about there perhaps. And for this bottom one, I'm going to box select these two vertices. I'm going to turn it to sharp interpolation on proportional editing. I'm going to hit SX, I'm going to scale these in to round about there. Okay. I'm then going to hit Ctrl R, and I'm going to add one loop cut in the middle here, and I'm going to select this top vertice here. I'm going to zoom in. I'll hit O to turn off my proportional editing. I'll then hit G, Z, and I'm going to snap that to the grid to around about there. Just going to hide my camera so it's not in the way. I'll then select this vertice, hold down Control, select this vertice. I'm going to hit numpad 3 to go into side view. I'm going to zoom in, G, Y, and I'm going to snap it to the grid 2 units. I'll then deselect that one, deselect this one, numpad 3 to go into side view, G, Y, bring it out another 2 units, and then finally we'll just select this middle vertice here. I'm going to hit numpad 3 for side view, GY, I'm going to bring that out another 2 units. Let's just rename this object to Didiplis Diandra leaf. Maybe I can bring this base in a little bit more. Tab into edit mode again, we'll switch it to sharp interpolation. So I'm going to box select these vertices here. I'm going to hit SX, I'm going to bring these in to around about there. I'll then tab out of edit mode, I'm going to hit Shift S and choose cursor to selected to ensure the cursor is at the base. I'm then going to change my transform pivot point to 3D cursor. I'll hit numpad 3 for side view. I'll then tab into edit mode, I'll select this top vertice here, and with proportional editing turned on, set to smooth, I'm going to hit R, and I'm going to rotate this round to something around about there. I'll then hit R, scroll in my proportional editing to something around about there. Select all vertices. We're going to bring this down slightly so there's a slight intersection here with all the vertices selected. I'm going to hit G, Z, bring this down to around about there. I'm then going to hit G, Y. I'm going to bring this forward and holding down Shift to snap it in smaller increments. I'm going to bring it forward so it intersects with this point here. I'll then tab out of edit mode. Let's just move this to a collection. I'm going to Control C and copy that name. I'm then going to hit M for move, add collection, and I'm going to hit Control V to copy the name, and I'll click this button and it moves that leaf into this collection. I'll then hit Z for shade smooth. I can now mute that collection. So now we'll make the rest of the plant in geometry nodes. So I'm going to hit numpad 1 for front view, Shift A, add, and we'll go for plane. We're going to click new on geometry nodes, so make sure you've got your geometry nodes tab open. So I'm going to click new for a new geometry nodes tree, and we're going to rename this to Didiplis Diandra. I'm just going to break the connection here. If you haven't got that option, you go to edit, preferences, go to add-ons, and type in node for node wrangler, and then just enable the node wrangler here. And all you have to do to break that connection is you hold down Control, hold down your right mouse button and strike through. The first thing we're going to need is a curved line, so Shift A and search for curved line, and we'll add that. We'll plug the curved line straight into the geometry. As you can see, we've got a line here. I'm going to move all these lights as well so we can see what we're doing. So there we go, we've got a curved line. I'm then going to resample the curve, because at the moment there's only 2 points. There's 1 point at the bottom, 1 point at the top. And if we were to distribute the leaves, we'd only have 1 leaf at the bottom and 1 leaf at the top, and we want them going all the way down. So I'll hit Shift A, add search, and search for resample curve, and place that into here. Maybe I have a count of like 50. So now we want to convert this to a mesh. Shift A and search curve to mesh, and we'll pop that into here. For the profile, we want a curved circle. So Shift A, add search curve circle. I'm going to pop that into the profile curve. Obviously that's way too big, so I'm going to hit 0.005 and maybe I'll give it a resolution of 4. We're going to need an instance on points. Shift A, add, and we'll search for instance on points. I'll pop that there, and the instance is going to be our Didiplis Diandra leaf. So with our Didiplis Diandra geometry node, we're going to drag the leaf into here, which is an object info, and we're going to use it as an instance, and we want it before the curve to mesh because we only want the leaves to appear on these points here. So I'll drag this resample curve into points, and then we're going to pop this into here quick. That will disappear, and then I'll plug the geometry into the instance. I'll click pick instance, and as you can see, we've got our leaves. There should be 50 leaves there. It's determined by this number here. And then I'm going to join that with the original mesh. So Shift A, add geometry, and we'll go for join geometry. We'll pop that into there, and we'll pop this into the top socket. So we should have our stem and the leaves now. Obviously the scale is way off here, so I'm going to hit Shift A, add, and we'll go search and type in random for random value, and we'll select the random value. We'll keep this one as a float. I'm going to pop this into the scale, and for the minimum size I'll use 0.05, and for the maximum 0.1. Let's just mute the Didiplis Diandra leaf collection there. Now we're going to want this to rotate around the stem, so that should be an easy fix as well. Shift A, add, search, align for align Euler to vector, and we're also going to use another random value. So Shift A, search, random for random value. This random value is going to be a vector, so we're going to change it from float to vector. I'm then going to plug the value into the rotation, and I'll plug the rotation into the rotation of the instance on points. I'm going to choose Z for Z rotation, and for the max I'm going to type in pi divide 2 times 4, and I'm going to select all of these here. I'm going to hit Control C for copy. I'll then select all of these here. I'll hit Control V, but at the beginning I'm going to type in minus. So now they should all be rotating around randomly between 360 degrees. I think that's correct. Pi divide 2 times 4. Correct me if I'm wrong there. The Didiplis Diandras aren't 100% straight, so we need to warp this stem quite a bit. That should be easy enough. So I'm going to select these nodes here. I'm going to grab that across. I'm going to hit Shift A, and we'll search for set position, and choose set position. I'm going to pop that into here. I'm also going to plug that into here. And now I'm going to add a noise texture. Shift A and search for noise, and we'll choose noise texture. I'm going to change it to 4D. I'm going to plug the color into the offset. So what that's done is offset the object by 0.5. So now imagine this square here is the texture space. This point would be 0, and up here this point would be 1, and half of 1 is 0.5. So it shifted everything on the X, Y and Z location by 0.5. Going to side view, you can see it there. In order to rectify that, I'm going to add a vector math node. So Shift A, add utilities, go to vector and vector math. We'll set it to subtract. We'll plug that in between here, and we're going to subtract it by 0.5. So now it's reset back to 0 of its origin point. We only want to distort this on the X and Y location. We don't want to distort it on the Z location. To do that, we're going to add Shift A, search, separate X, Y, Z. Shift A, search, combine X, Y, Z. And plug that into there. And then we're just going to join the X and the Y together. I'm now going to add a vector math. So I'll choose this vector math. I'll duplicate it, I'll pop it over to here, set this back to 0, and I'll choose scale. We're actually going to have 2 of these, so let's just grab all of these, I'll duplicate this one, pop this one here. Now we don't want the whole plant distorted, especially at the base, so I want a gradient going up, kind of like what we done with the plant animator. So I'm going to add a position node, Shift A, add search position, Shift A, utilities, vector, vector rotate, Shift A, and we'll go for texture, gradient texture, Shift A, go to utilities, color, and we'll choose color ramp. I'm just going to drag all these nodes across slightly. So now I'll grab the position from the position node into the vector rotate. I'll then bring the vector from the vector rotate into the gradient, the color from the gradient texture into the color ramp, and then the color from the color ramp into the first vector scale. And we're going to need to change the axes. For the Y, this second one, this is going to be 1, this one's going to be 0, and the angle is going to be 90 for 90 degrees. So now with this flag, I've got control of the fall off of the distortion, so I'm going to set this to something like 0.1. I just need to add a position node and a vector math node at the beginning here to plug as the vector. I'm just going to copy this position node here, so I'm going to hit Shift D, bring this over, I'll copy this subtract node here, Shift D, we'll set this one to multiply, I'll plug the position into the top socket, I'll plug the vector into the vector of the noise texture, and this is going to be kept at 0.5. I'm going to change the scale of the noise texture to 2, and we can change the seed with this W factor here. I'm just going to neaten up this node structure, and I'll be right back when I'm done. Okay, now we need to expose some of these values so they appear in the modifier here. So I guess the first one will be the W factor. So with your group input node, we're going to drag this W factor into this socket. We'll grab the scale, no need to worry about the detail, all the roughness really, maybe a bit of distortion, can grab that in there. I'll then drag this across to here, and with this random value, we'll grab this seed and we'll pop that into there, so that's the rotation seed, and then maybe we can grab the random value for the scale minimum and scale maximum into there. I'll then drag this across, so I'm going to hit N to open up the N panel, and we're going to rename these values here. So for the seed, rotation seed, for the min, scale min, and for the max, scale max. I hit N to hide that. I'm just going to neaten up my node structure here. I'll be back in 2 seconds. Okay, that's a bit more readable. I like to keep a neat node structure, so when I come back to my project later on down the line, it's easier to read. So with the object selected, I'm going to rename it to Didiplis Diandra, and maybe we can go to the shader editor now. So I'll go to shader editor, and for the Didiplis Diandra leaf, this object here, I'm going to add a new material, and we'll call this Didiplis Diandra leaf, and then increase this window so we can kind of see what we're doing here. I'll also go into viewport shading. Let's just change it back to the default viewport. So I'll go into viewport shading here, just so we can see what we're doing. Let's just turn this to green just for the minute. Okay, so I'm going to add a texture coordinate, Shift A, input, and we'll choose texture coordinate, and then Shift A, converter, and we'll go separate XYZ, Shift A, converter, color ramp, Shift A, color, mix color. I'll duplicate that mix color, I'll pop that up here, Shift A, input, and we'll go for object info. So for this top color ramp, I'm going to choose a really light green, sort of almost on the yellow end, something around about there perhaps. I'll then hit Control C, Control V, and I'm going to darken this colour down to about there. And the bottom socket for this mixed colour, we're going to have it a green, but we're going to give it kind of like a yellowish tinge, so it's, you know, just edging between yellow and green. I'm going to plug the result from this mixed colour into here. Let's just turn this to a dark green just so we can see what we're doing here. I'll then plug the colour ramp into the mix factor here. I'll plug the Z value from the separate XYZ into the colour ramp, and we're going to use generated coordinates. So now, as you can see, the darker colour is appearing at the bottom and the lighter colour is appearing at the top. We actually want to flip this colour ramp round. Basically, we want the yellow to appear near the stem. So when I plug this mix color into socket A. I also plug the random into the factor. That means all the leaves are going to have a slightly different color to each other. The yellow is near the stem and it spans out to green. Maybe I can darken this up slightly to around about there. Okay, so we're also going to want to add a translucent element to this. So I'm going to hit Shift A, shader, and we'll go for translucent. Shift A, and we'll go for shader, mix shader. And the translucency will be the bottom socket, and the mix factor is going to be a Fresnel. So Shift A, input, and we choose Fresnel, and then we plug the factor from the Fresnel into the mix shader. So now we need to take the result from this mix color into the color of the translucent, but we'll add a Shift A, color, and RGB curves, and we'll pop that into here. Normally this would be actually a lighter color, but we're going to make it darker, so we're just going to drag the curve to around about there. Excellent. For a bit more detail, we're going to add a noise texture for bump and for roughness. Shift A, texture, and we'll go for noise texture. I'm going to convert this to 4D, and I'm going to choose hybrid multifractal. I'll then hit Shift A, input, and we'll choose texture coordinate. Shift A, vector mapping. I'm going to use the UV coordinates, so plug the UV into the top socket here, and the vector into the vector of the noise texture. I'll then hit Shift A, vector, and choose bump. I'm going to plug the factor from the noise texture into the height of the bump node. I'll then plug the result from the bump node into the normal of the principal BSDF and into the normal of the translucent BSDF. I'm going to change the scale to, let's say, 4, and I'll increase the gain to 10. We're definitely going to have to change the strength for this bump, so I'm going to reduce this down to maybe 0.15. Yep, I'll be happy with that. I'm also going to plug the result from the noise texture into the roughness of the principal BSDF. Shift A, add converter, and we'll go for color ramp. We'll pop this in between there. And I'm going to change this black value. I'm going to bring this all the way up to, let's say, 0.65. Okay, I'll be happy with that. We're going to want a material for the stem. I'm going to keep it pretty much the same material. I'll just change a couple of things. So I'm going to select this object, and with your material tab, we're going to select the Didiplis Diandra leaf. I'm going to click this number 2, and I'm going to delete leaf and replace it with stem. So now this is its own material. Before it takes effect on here, we're going to have to add it into the geometry nodes. You go to your geometry node editor, and we'll add Shift A and go for material, set material, and we plug this in between the curve to mesh and the geometry node, and we're going to select that stem material, Didiplis Diandra stem. Now it's using that material. Before we leave geometry nodes, go to curve to mesh, and you're going to click fill caps, and that basically just ensures that the cap of your stem doesn't have a hole in. So I'm going to flick back to shader editor, and with your Didiplis Diandra stem selected, I'm going to change a couple of settings here. We're going to change it from UV to generated coordinates on the noise texture, and I'm going to change the scale of the noise texture to something that we can see. So maybe let's go for 7 for now. Let's see what that does. Increase the strength. Okay, maybe we can bring this up a bit more. So I'm going to choose a scale of 15. I'll bring the strength back down to, let's say, 0.25. Maybe I can increase that a bit more. Let's say 25 perhaps. And I'll reduce the strength on the bump to 0.15. We just want it to be subtle. We don't want any flickering on the final renders. I'm going to mute the overlays just so I can see the gradient. We might have to adjust this gradient a bit. So I'm actually going to add another 2 flags on this color ramp as well. So if I drag this black across, you can see it's kind of yellowish at the bottom and it goes to green as it rises upwards. I'll add another flag here, drag it across. This is going to be black. I'll add one more flag. We'll drag this across, and this is going to be white. So essentially what I'm doing here is I want it to be yellow going into green and then yellow as it reaches the top. So maybe I'll set this to 0.75 or possibly 0.8, and this first flag here I'll set to 0.2. I might even change it from linear to B-spline just so it's a smoother gradient. Now I'm going to mute my Didiplis Diandra leaf collection here. I'll select my Didiplis Diandra. Let's just reselect the overlays. I'll select this Didiplis Diandra plant. I'm going to hit M for move, and I'm going to add a collection, and I'm going to name it Didiplis Diandra. I'll click this button here to move it to that collection. With that object selected, we've got all the control points over here. We've got the scale of the noise texture, got the distortion if we need it, got the rotation seed if we're not happy with the distribution of the leaves, and we've got the scale min and the scale max of the leaves. I might even expose one more factor. So if I go back to my geometry nodes and you see this count here of how many leaves we want. Maybe we can expose that into our geometry nodes here. So maybe I'll grab this count and I'll plug it into the bottom here. Of course, I'm going to neaten up my node structure. And then that count is now exposed in here. So that's the Didiplis Diandra done. The next plant we're going to make is Crinum Thaianum. So with this Didiplis Diandra, I just might rename this from Didiplis Diandra to Didiplis Diandra GN for Didiplis Diandra geometry nodes. I'll then mute that collection. And the next plant we're going to make is Crinum Thaianum. And this is going to be a fairly easy one to make. We're not going to use geometry nodes for this one. So I'm going to change this back to my shader editor. We're going to make this a similar way to we made the Echinodorus tenalis, which was the grass. This one here. So let's just mute that. We're going to unmute these base leaves. So I'm going to select this middle base leaf here. I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate. And I'm going to rename this to Crinum Thaianum base leaf 1. I'm then going to hit M for move, and I'm going to add a collection, and I'm going to rename the collection to Crinum Thaianum base leaves. I'll then click this button here to move it to that collection. I'm then going to mute these base leaves. We don't need to see that, and I might drag this collection all the way up to the top. There we go. And with this object selected, so I'm going to make sure my transform pivot point is set to 3D cursor. And with this object selected, I'm going to hit Shift S and choose cursor to selected. I'm then going to hit SZ, holding down control, and I'll drag it up one notch. I'll then hit Shift D, drag it on the X-axis, snap it to there. I hit Shift S, cursor to selected. I then hit S, and I'm going to hold down control and drag it up to about there. I'm going to hit Shift D, X, snap it to the grid, Shift S, cursor to selected, and I'm going to hit S, hold down control. I'm going to make it slightly bigger. I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'm going to select these middle vertices here, and with proportional editing turned on and set to smooth, I'm going to hit SX, scale that in, so maybe around about there. I'll then select this middle one, hit Shift S, cursor to selected, tab into edit mode, select these middle vertices, hit SX, and I'm going to scale it in to around about there. Maybe I'll select this one, hit Shift S, cursor to selected, tab into edit mode, select these vertices here, hit SX, and scale it in to maybe around about there. Okay, so now we need to drag the bases up of all of these. Select this first one, shift select this one, shift select this one, so they're all selected. I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'll then box select all these bottom vertices. I'll turn off proportional editing by hitting O. I'll then hit SZ0, so they all scale on the Z axis by 0, and they should all be in line with this cursor here. I'll then hit GZ. I'm going to drag these down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units so it intersects with the ground. I'm going to select this vertice here in the middle, and then I'm going to control select this vertice, shift select this vertice, hold down control, select this vertice, shift select this vertice, hold down control and select this vertice. Numpad 3 for side view. I'm going to zoom in, GY, and bring it out on the Y axis by 3 units. I'll then deselect these bottom ones, and I'll deselect these top vertices. Hit numpad 3 for side view, GY, and I'm going to snap it to the grid by another 3 units. Now we just need to select these center vertices here. So I'll select this one, and this one. Numpad 3, GY, 1, 2, 3. Excellent. So with all 3 of these selected, I'm going to hit Shift D, Y, Shift D, Y, and maybe we can do it one more time. Shift D, Y. So we're going to go through the same process as what we did with the grass assets, or the Echinodorus tenalis, these ones here. We're not going to give them as much twist or as much bend. We're going to let geometry nodes do the hard work on that one. So with this first one selected here, I'm going to hit Shift S, cursor to selected, make sure that we've got 3D cursor as our pivot point. Tab into edit mode, select this top vertice here. I then hit numpad 3. I'm going to go into X-ray view, turn on proportional editing, and I have an interpolation type of smooth. R, I'm just going to rotate this round to about there. R, once again, to around about there. Tab out of edit mode. I'll then select this one here. I hit Shift S, choose cursor to selected, tab into edit mode, select this top vertice, numpad 3 for side view. I'm going to hit R, I'm going to bring this down to around about there, then I'm going to hit R again, bring in my proportional editing to around about there. Tab out of edit mode, I'll select this end one now, Shift S, cursor to selected, tab into edit mode, select this top vertice, hit numpad 3, I'm going to hit R, I'm going to bring this across to around about there, and maybe R, bring this in to maybe something around there. Okay, now I'm going to do this to all of these. I'll get right back to you as soon as I'm done. Okay, maybe we can give them a bit of twist on the z-axis. So if you remember how to do that, we'll select this object here, hit Shift S, cursor to selected, tap into edit mode, make sure the top vertex is selected, hit R, Z, and we're just going to rotate it on the z-axis. Choose this one, Shift S, cursor to selected, tap into edit mode, make sure the top vertex is selected, hit R, Z, I'll twist it the other way, tab out of edit mode, select this one, Shift S, cursor to selected, tab into edit mode, select the top vertex, R, Z, and we're going to do this to all of these blades here, so I'll get back to you when that's done. Okay, so let's just select all of those leaves. So I'm going to click the bottom one, I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and select this top one here, so they're all selected. I'm then going to hit Z and we'll go for Shade Smooth, then hit Shift D to duplicate all of those, hit M for Move, and we're going to add a new collection, and we'll call this Crinum Thaianum, and I'm going to click this button here to move all those to that collection. And now with the Crinum Thaianum base leaves, we can mute that. And now we're going to rearrange all of these so they're in an arrangement of a plant. These outer ones are going to be the smaller leaves. These ones here are going to be on the outside, and the larger ones are going to be in the middle, unlike the other plant that we made. The other plant we made, the smaller leaves were in the middle and the larger ones were on the outside. This is the opposite. So now we need to rearrange these into a plant formation. So I'm going to select these leaves here and these ones here. I'm going to hit G, X, just drag that on the X axis out of the way. Now we can hit numpad 7 to go into top view. I'll grab this leaf, I'm going to hit G, grab this across to maybe around about there perhaps. I'll just grab this, hit G, and we'll grab this to maybe round about there. We need to change the pivot point from 3D cursor to individual origins. Then I'll hit RZ180 and I'll grab this one, G, we'll just bring this over to here, hit R90, and we'll grab this one, G, and we'll bring this over to here, R90 minus. Okay, so now we're going to duplicate all of these. We're going to change our pivot point to median point. I'm going to hit Shift D, and I'm going to hit R. I'm just going to rotate this round to round about there. In fact, I'm going to turn off snapping for this. Now I'm going to rearrange these, hitting G and R. I'll just keep doing this until I've got an arrangement, and I'll get right back to you. Something like that. Maybe I can rotate some of these as well so they're pointing inwards a bit more. So if this one's selected, I'm just going to hit R. I'm going to bring that in. I'm going to hit R, bring that in, just so we got a couple pointing inwards. Maybe one more. Maybe we could use this one. So trying to go into like a side view here. Hit R, bring that in. And I'm going to ensure that none of them are intersecting. So I'm just going to bring this one out. Maybe I'll bring this one out. Maybe I'll bring this in. Okay, we've got no intersection there. So now we'll choose the next size down. We'll choose these ones. So I'll select this first one. I'm going to hit G, bring this around, hit R, bring it around to about there. Then go to side view, just make sure there's no intersection. Maybe I can rotate it on the Z axis, RZ. Give it a nice evenish space. Remember, nothing in nature is perfect. You know, you can be a bit rough with this. As long as there's no intersection, you're all good. Grab this one over to here. Hit R, bring it in a bit, and maybe I can rotate it out a bit. I'm going to have a bit of intersection there, so rotate that out. Okay, grab this next one. We'll grab this last one. I'm going to hit G, bring it over to here, rotate it round, and I'll rotate it from this view as well, so it's sticking out a bit more. Okay, we can duplicate some of these, so I might duplicate that one I've got selected, bring it over to here. I'm going to hit R, bring it round to about there. Maybe I can change the size, so scale it down a bit. I'm just working these as best as I can. Okay, I'll work on the smaller leaves now. I'm going to select all of these. I'm going to hit Shift D, X, and then I'll bring these in. So I'm just trying to fill these gaps. We can bring that in a bit more. I'll select this one, hit G, bring this around, maybe bring this one up here, move it about a bit, G, Shift Z to drag it on every axis but the Z axis, and then hit R and bring this down to about there, RZ, rotate it round, bring this one into play, so G, bring this one round to here, hit R for rotate, G, bring it in, and I'll also give it more of an angle, so R, Maybe I can bring it in a bit. G, Shift Z, bring it into around about there. Okay, then we use this one. G, bring this over to here, hit R to rotate, bring it in over to there perhaps. I'm not happy with that position, so G, Shift Z, bring it to around about there, R, bring it round, and then from this angle, I'd hit R. I want you to use all of these and shimmy them round until you got something that you like, ensuring that there's no intersection. So I'll get back to you as soon as this is done. Okay, so this is what I've got. Just checking that there's no intersection here. This one's a bit close perhaps, so maybe I can drag that out or rotate it out slightly. Now I'm going to hit Shift C to recenter my cursor. I'm then going to select this bottom one in the list, Control Shift Select for top one. I'm going to hit Control J to join geometry, so they're all joined as one mesh. And then I'm going to go to Object, Set Origin, and Origin to 3D Cursor. And I'm going to rename this object to Crinum Thaianum. And for the material, we're going to use the Echinodorus tenalis, which was the grass material. So click this tab here, click Echinodorus tenalis, and then I'll drag this up and let's see if we can change the material slightly. So this should be a slightly brighter green, or more of a vibrant green. So if I click this number 13 tab here, this will make it its own unique material, and then I'll rename it to Crinum Thaianum. And to change these colours, I'm just simply going to make these slightly brighter, a bit more saturation, and also a lot more sort of brighter at the bottom as well, a richer tone of sort of greeny yellow. I'm also going to increase the strength of the bump on this one to, let's say, 0.1, and I'll set the distance to 1. And for the scale, I'm going to drop this down to 2.5. I'm happy with that. So let's just see what we've got. We've got the Crinum Thaianum, we've got the Didiplis Diandra, we've got the Echinodorus tenalis, and we've got the Echinodorus amazonicus. In fact, I'm going to delete this one and delete this one, just so we've got the one plant there. Now I'm just going to add the geometry nodes plant animators to the two plants that we just made. So with the Crinum Thaianum, I'm going to go to add modifier, we'll go to geometry nodes, and I'm going to select the plant animator. If I push play, you can see it's animating. We'll also go to the Didiplis Diandra. I've actually spelt that wrong there on my collection, so I'm just going to change that now. So add an I in there. We'll go to the Didiplis Diandra GN. I'll collapse this geometry nodes here. I'm going to add modifier. We'll go to geometry nodes and we'll select the plant animator. If I click play, you can see that's animating. I'm not really happy with the way it's animating, so maybe we can change the scale a bit. Maybe I'll bring the detail right down so it's a bit more smooth. Okay, I'll then mute that, select my overlays, hit numpad 1. Now it's time to move on to making the rocks. We're going to make 4 rocks, and every time we duplicate one, it's going to have a different appearance. I'm going to hit Shift A, add mesh, and we'll go for cube. I'll go to add modifier, generate subdivision surface. I'm going to keep it at level 1. I'm going to apply that modifier, tab into edit mode, go to X-ray view, and I'm going to select all of these bottom vertices here. I'll then turn off proportional editing. I'm going to hit S, Z and 0 to flatten the base. Select all the vertices. I'm going to hit G, Z. I'm just going to drag this up to around about there. Maybe I'll drag it up so the origin is on the base. I can drag it down a bit more there. GZ, I'm just going to drag this down so the base is touching the floor, maybe a slight intersection. I then tab out of edit mode. I'm going to rename this to Rock 1. I'll then hit M for move, and we're going to add a collection, and we'll call this Rocks. I'll then click this button here to move it to that collection. I'm then going to hit Shift D, X, hold down Control to snap it to the grid. In fact, I'm going to turn snapping back on. Shift D, X, and Shift D, X. And we're going to have 4 of these. So maybe with this first one, tab into edit mode. I'm going to re-enable my proportional editing, and I'm going to have it on smooth. I'll then deactivate my X-ray. I'll just grab this vertice here. I'll turn off snapping. I'll just hit G, X. I'm going to drag this out to maybe round about there. Drag this one on the Y-axis, G, Y. Maybe I could bring this one in, G, bring that into there, and possibly hit G. We'll just drag this up to around about there. So you've got a rough shape there. With this one, tab into edit mode. I'm going to grab these two vertices, I'm going to hit G, Y, use proportional editing, grab this vertex, G, Z. We're just going to reshape these roughly. G, Shift Z, drag it on every axis but the Z axis. Okay, maybe we can bring this up. G, Z, to around about there. Okay, tab out of edit mode. I'll then grab this one, tab into edit mode. I'll grab these two vertices. I'm going to hit G, Y, grab this out to maybe something around about there. Grab this one, and this one. Hit G, Z. I'm just going to drag that up to maybe something around about there. Maybe I'll grab these two, hit G, Shift Z to exclude the Z axes, bring it out to about there. Grab this one here and hit G, X. I'm just going to drag this in something around about there perhaps. Okay. With this one, I'm going to tab into edit mode, select this bottom vertex, then select this outer loop here. All the bottom faces selected. S, Shift Z, scale this out to around about there. Grab this top one, I'm going to hit G, Z. I'm going to bring this up to maybe around about there. And maybe I'll hit S, Shift Z, scale this in. G, Z, grab that back down, and then maybe Control Plus to select all of those. Hit G, Z, grab these up, perhaps grab this vertex and this vertex, hit G, X, grab these out, something like that. I'll go to Face Select View by hitting 3, G, Y, I'm going to grab this out to around about there. Okay, bring this vertex in, G, X, I'll bring that in to maybe something around about there. Okay, so we've got 4 random rocks here. Z for shade smooth. Now we're going to add the modifiers. We're just going to add the modifiers for this one, and then we'll copy the modifiers onto all of these objects here. I'm going to add a subdivision surface, so generate subdivision surface. We'll set that to level 2. Add another modifier. We'll go to deform and displace. I'll click new on that and I'll set it to 0.1 for now. Add another modifier, generate subdivision surface. That's going to be level 2. I'll then collapse that modifier. Add another modifier, which is going to be deform displace. Again, I'm going to add new. I'm just going to set it to 0.1 for now. I'll collapse that window. We'll add one more subdivision surface. So generate subdivision surface. This is going to be set to 1. I'll collapse that, and then I'll add one more displace modifier, deform, displace. I'm going to click new, set this to 0.1 for now. Okay, I'm going to mute all of these except for the top displacement. I'm going to hit Shift A and we'll go for empty and choose a sphere, empty, and we'll name this rock displace empty. Then we'll select this object here. I'm going to change the coordinates on the first displacement from local to object, and the object is going to be that rock displace empty. We need to add some vertex groups here as well. So with this one selected, I'm going to hit numpad 1 to go into front view. I'll then toggle on X-ray view. I'm going to select all these top vertices here. Go to my vertex data panel. I'm going to add a vertex group. I'm going to click assign. I'll select this one. Go into edit mode. I'm going to select all these top vertices. I'm going to add a vertex group. We're going to assign that. And we'll do the same for this one. Tab into edit mode. Select all the top vertices. Add a vertex group. Click assign. And we'll do the same for this one. So I'm going to box select all of those vertices, add a vertex group, and we'll click assign. So now with this first one selected, go back to my modifiers. I'm going to give it a strength of 1. We might need to change this in a minute. And we'll choose that vertex group, which is group. So that way the base of the rock always stays at the origin. I'll click this button, which will take us into the texture section. And I'm going to change it from image or movie to Stucky. I'll set the size to 0.75. Okay, so now I'll go back to my modifiers. I'm going to enable the next subdivision and the next displace. I'll open up the displace. I'm going to change the texture coordinates from local to object. We'll then eyedrop select that empty object. We're going to choose the vertex group. I'm also going to change the strength to 0.5. Select the texture tab here. And I'm going to change it from image or movie to clouds. We change the colour from grayscale to colour. I'm going to give it a size of 0.5. I'll then go back to my modifiers tab. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to enable the next level of subdivision, which is level 1, and I'm going to enable the displace modifier. I'll open up this displace modifier. I'm going to change the coordinate system from local to object, and that object again is going to be the rock displace empty, and we'll choose the vertex group, which is group. Click the texture tab button here, which will take us into the textures. Change it from image or movie to blender clouds again. Change it from soft to hard and grayscale to color, and I'll give it a size of 0.12. I'll then go back to my modifiers. I'm going to change the strength of this displacement modifier to, let's say, 0.05. Let's try that. Okay, I'm happy with that. Select this object, shift select this one, shift select this one, and last but not least, shift select this one, Control L, select copy modifiers. So I'm going to collapse all these. So that's all the modifiers done for these rocks. Now we'll do the materials. So I'm going to click new. I'll type in rock 1. I'll then select this object, shift select this, and last but not least, shift select this one, Control L, and we'll link materials. So now they all share this same material. Let's just increase this window so we can see what we're doing a bit better. I'm going to toggle out of X-ray view. I'm going to make sure my pivot point is set to median point. Okay. Shift A, we'll go for color, mix color. This bottom socket, I'm going to turn sort of like a dark grey but with a hint of blue in there. Not much blue, just a hint of blue. The top socket, I'm going to turn to a sort of a light grey, again with another little hint of blue there. I'm going to plug this into the colour. Let's just turn my roughness up for now. Shift A, add texture, and we'll go for noise texture. I'm going to set it to 4D. Shift A, input, and we'll go for texture coordinate. And then Shift A, vector, and we'll go for mapping. And we're going to use the object coordinates here. Select the object coordinates, and the object is going to be rock empty. So select this eyedropper, and we'll select the rock displacement empty. So with this mapping, we'll plug it into the noise texture. I'll then plug the noise texture into this colour mix, and we can add Shift A, converter, color ramp, and we'll plug that in between here. I'm going to change the scale to 2.4. I'm going to drag these flags till we got a nice bit of contrast here. Maybe I'll set that to 0.6, drag this up to, let's say, 0.45. So the next level of detail, we'll hit Shift D and we'll duplicate this color mix node. I'm going to plug the result into the top socket of this mixed color node. Before we continue, actually, if I just go to viewport shading, and I'm going to turn off scene light and scene world, so we've got the default HDRI. I'm going to go to this render properties here, and with Eevee selected, we're going to have to enable this ambient occultation for this to work. It will work in cycles by default, but I'm just making this in Eevee for now. Select this ambient occulation tab here, and then I'm going to hit Shift A, input, and we'll choose ambient occulation. I'm going to choose only local, and the distance, let's just say 5,000 meters. I'm then going to duplicate this color ramp over here, drag this white flag all the way across, drag this one all the way across to, let's say, 0.87. We'll work with that for now, and I'm going to drag the ambient occulation into the factor of there, and the color from the color ramp into the factor of here. You can kind of see what's happening there. Okay, adjust the color of this one, so I'm going to make this a slight lighter color. It doesn't matter about this top socket here. We're going to be replacing this with another color mix, so let's just drag this up to here. In fact, I'm going to crunch in these numbers a bit more, something around about there. Okay, duplicate this color mix node, Shift D. I'm going to plug the result into the top socket, and this top color here, I'm going to turn to sort of a brownish color, maybe something around there. And this bottom one, I'm going to turn this to a lighter gray. It's got a hint of blue. Maybe I can make that one slightly darker. So I'm going to Shift D and duplicate that color ramp. I'm going to plug the AO into this color ramp, and I'm going to plug this color into the mix factor of this mix color node. I'll then drag this flag back a bit to around about there. Okay, maybe I'll drag the flag a bit more. Okay, I'm kind of happy with that. Grab this color ramp here, I hit Shift D, I'm going to take the factor into the factor of the color ramp, drag the color into the roughness. I'll expand the specular section on the principal BSDF, and I'll drag the color into the index of refraction level here. I'll then hold down Shift and my right mouse button and strike through. I'm just going to grab this across to around about there perhaps. Shift A, color, and we'll choose invert color, and I'll pop that into here. And with this color ramp, I'll click this arrow and we'll click flip color ramp. I'll then drag this across to maybe 0.75. Maybe I'll drag this one across to 0.25. And with this black color, I'm going to increase it to, let's say, about, we'll go for 0.5. And with the white, maybe I can tone this down 0.6. Maybe we'll turn this one down slightly to around about there. Let's just see what this looks like in cycles quick. Okay, need to add a bit of bump to this now, so I'm just going to drag these across. I'll drag this across to about there, just neaten everything up. I'm going to hit Shift A, go to Vector, and we'll choose Bump. I'll then plug the result from this mixed color into the height, and a normal socket from the bump node into the normal socket of the principal BSDF. Hit Shift A, Converter, Math, and we'll plug this in between this mixed color and the bump node. We'll set it to multiply, and that should normalize all these colors into a black and white balanced image, which we can use as a bump map. Let's just go into Cycles view, see what we've got. Go to Cycles, click this button. Okay, I'm kind of happy with that. So there are procedural rocks. I'll just switch back to Eevee. So let's just have a quick recap of what we've got so far. So these are the assets that we're going to be using in the aquarium. So we've got the rocks, we've got the Crinum Thaianum with the plant animator, we've got the Didiplis Diandra, that should have the plant animator on. We've got the Echinodorus tenalis, which is the grass. In the next episode we're going to do something with this, by the way. And we've got the Echinodorus amazonicus. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we've got 5 assets which are going to be distributed in the aquarium. In the next episode we're going to be turning these grasses into grass clusters rather than single blades. We're also going to be modelling the gravel and sand like the base of the aquarium and adding a geometry node distribution scatter system where we can automatically scatter all of our assets that we've made, so they'll scatter randomly every time you duplicate it. So let's just spread these assets about so we've got a final render going on here. So I'm going to enable my plane, enable my scatter plane, I'm going to enable my lights. With the scatter plane selected, I'm going to enable the scatter distribution system. I'm going to change this to geometry node editor, and I'm going to change the collection info, the group, to Didiplis Diandra. Turn down the density. We can change the scale. We'll change the scale minimum to, let's say, 0.25. Okay, let's just go into camera view. Maybe we can change the maximum scale to 0.25 and the minimum to 0.15, maybe 0.1. So I'm just changing the scatter distribution settings. I can change the rotation, the scale minimum, the scale maximum. Maybe I'll turn the scale minimum to 0.05. I'm just going to disable my depth of field on my camera. Select my camera, go to camera settings. Just going to mute the depth of field for the minute. Okay. Go back to my scatter distribution system. I'm going to re-enable my Crinum Thaianum. Let's just scale this down because that's way too big. So I'm just duplicating it, just going to distribute it around the seed. And maybe on these I can add a subdivision surface, so I'm going to hit Control 1, Control 1 and Control 1. And that should add a subdivision surface at level 1, but on render it will be level 2. Okay, so just as a quick note, with these Crinum Thaianums, for these to work properly, you're going to have to apply the rotation. So that's Control A and apply the rotation, and then the plant animators will work absolutely fine. Maybe I can scatter a few of these rocks about, re-enable our rocks. These are way too big at the moment. So let's just select all of these rocks. I'll change it to median point. With all these rocks selected, I'm going to shift select the rock empty. I'm going to hit S. I'm going to scale these down to around about there. Numpad 0 to go into camera view. I'm just going to hit G, Shift Z. I'm going to bring these out to around about here. I'll scale them down a bit more. Okay, I'm just going to distribute them around a bit. Let's go to our render view and we'll enable scene lights and scene world. Let's just grab this empty object. We'll scale it up. Maybe I can change the material of these rocks slightly as well. I'm not quite happy with that. Let's just do that now. So I just need to change the roughness to around about there. Also going to turn up the detail. So let's say 4. So that concludes this episode. In the next episode we're going to be making a procedural gravel / sand base for the aquarium, and we're also going to be improving the distribution system with geometry nodes so we can distribute all our assets in the substrate of the aquarium, and every time that we duplicate the aquarium it's going to generate a different seed, different colours and a different scattering, so every duplicate will look unique. So I hope you enjoyed this content, I hope you found it useful. Level up. Have a great day, and thanks for watching.